May I start by extending a very warm welcome to you all this evening to this, our 23rd Annual General Meeting of Stratford Town Trust. My name is Tim Bailey and it is my privilege to chair the Board of Trustees. Our meeting is being filmed and will be available to view on the website next week. Thank you to the Playhouse team and also to Charlie Budd and his team who are filming the meeting for us. And of course, it is really lovely to see so many members here. Thank you for coming along, and we very much value your support. But before we start the business of the meeting, I want to introduce you to some very special guests. In 2023, the Trust awarded funding to St Andrew's Church in Shottery for a children's and families worker with the aim to coordinate activities for children and develop links with families across Shottery and Bishopton. From this, Stamp Choir was formed, bringing together children aged from 4 to 15 to sing together for pleasure and friendship each week. Since then, the community activities, including the choir, have gone from strength to strength, and you can read more about them on page 10 of our annual review. As you can see, I'm delighted to say that they join us this evening for a short and special performance, which we very much hope you enjoy. So could you please join me in welcoming Caroline, Matt, and the children of Stamp Choir.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for a warm welcome. And it wasn't just from our loyal entourage at the back, it was the Town Trust welcoming into their AGM. So we're so thankful to be here. Thank you for giving us the chance. This is our biggest venue yet, isn't it? And we're very excited. Little nervous, but a bit excited too. We hope that today can be our chance to say a big thank you to the Town Trust, who, along with St Andrew's Church and the Christine Foundation, are a key funder, and we wouldn't be here without you. So we hope, really, our main aim of today is not just to remember the words and actions, is it? That's one of them, but also for us to demonstrate to you, really, what Stamp means to us and how your support really does bring joy to every one of us here. So please do enjoy.
Gospel train is coming, I hear
I mean, that was just absolutely wonderful. What a great way to start. Thank you to Caroline and Matt and the children for joining us and opening our AGM in such a special way. And thanks very much to all the mums and dads and family members. So I'm sorry, but I really can't compete with that. But here we go. You will have seen the agenda for this evening, and for those that have attended before, obviously you'll note that we are following a similar theme to previous AGMs, and it is very much our aim to conclude by no later than 8:30, when trustees and officers of the trust will be available here in the theatre and in the bar area for a more informal chat should you want one. Shortly, I'm going to hand over to Sarah, our Chief Executive, who will talk you through a sample of our achievements since our last AGM, but much more can be found in our annual review and of course also online. In reality, it would be lovely to tell you about every success, but we really would be here till late into the night if we were to do that, which really does demonstrate how hard the Trust is working to support all our beneficiaries across the town. We just do so much, whether it's providing grants, operating our community hub, managing our green spaces, the Guild Chapel, and so much more. It's probably worth noting that whilst we will be focusing on the reporting period, as shown in our accounts, we may stray outside that time band a little as we celebrate more recent good news and tell you about our future plans. But before I pass over to Sarah, I would just like to take time to highlight the work of our many and numerous volunteers who give their time freely to support a range of trust activities which benefit our town. Our volunteers include the Guild Chapel, where our guides welcome visitors to the chapel and also host events. The Community Hub, where volunteers provide and support a range of activities for services for hub users. Our Green Spaces volunteers who volunteer with land management and maintenance projects, and of course our Repair Cafe volunteers fixing and repairing damaged and faulty items for reuse. And then of course there's us, our trustees. We're also volunteers. We give our time freely and our expertise to provide strategic direction, financial management, scrutiny, and to support the trust. We are so lucky to be supported by over 70 volunteers, but of course we can never have too many. So if you are interested in volunteering, please do speak to one of the team later. Tonight, I thought you might be curious to know a little bit more about the work of us, the trustees, as much of what we do is unseen, and I thought I would just speak briefly about our role. You will probably know, but to remind you, we have 5 elected trustees voted in by you, our members, 3 trustees co-opted for their skills and experience in areas including finance, property management and communications, and 3 more trustees who are nominated by Stratford Town Council, 2 of whom have recently joined us in June, and they are Sarah Summers and Lewis McNaught, and we're very delighted to have them on our board. In addition to our trustees, we are fortunate to be supported by 2 non-executive members who sit on our Audit and Governance Committee. They provide independent scrutiny of our policies and procedures, amongst other things. Members may be interested to know that in addition to our regular board meetings, which all our trustees attend, trustees generally sit on a further 2 of our 3 committees. Our committees are Audit and Governance, Finance, Investment and Property, and Grants and Community Engagement. Our 3 committees and board meet between 4 and 6 times a year on average, with occasional extraordinary meetings. Being a trustee does demand time reading papers and preparing papers, the meetings themselves, and also additional engagements representing the trust across the town. And of course, our role is to support the executive. I became a trustee because I recognise how fortunate we are in Stratford to benefit from a multi-million-pound trust that supports such a wide range of diverse, good causes. and in its own right provides a broad range of facilities, from maintaining the Swan Fountain and the bandstand to our allotments, our green spaces, our community hub. I became a trustee because I wanted to give something back to our town, and I'm privileged to represent you as an elected member. As a town, we must be the envy of many small, similar-sized towns up and down the country to be supported in such a way. We are lucky to have the Guild and College estates, which are managed so effectively by the Trust. Before I close, in addition to welcoming our two new trustees, I wanted to thank our retiring trustees, Liz Coles, who was appointed in June of 2020 and served a term of 4 years, and Tony Jackson, who was appointed in June 2016 and served the maximum of 2 terms. Tony was also the chair of our Grant and Community Engagement Committee from 2017 to 2019, and also you'll know him because he chaired our board from 2021 to 2023. There we go. You are allowed to clap, thank you. So in closing, I would like to thank all our volunteers for the tremendous work they do. Please do keep volunteering, and as I hand over to Sarah, I hope you find her presentation interesting and informative as we share some of the many examples of our work here in Stratford. Sarah.
Well, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going to recover from those children singing for quite some. Have a tissue. There we go. So, it's my enormous privilege to lead the Trust. And when I joined 6 years ago, I hoped that we could move away from being a transactional grant maker to an organisation that works in partnership. And in that sense, I believe that 2023 marked a real step change in our approach to achieving that. And although our grant making remains the foundation of our work, we continue to find as many different ways as possible to connect with the community. And when looking back over 2023, I was drawn to reflect on our work since the pandemic and really how far we've come. We're fortunate to look after so many community assets, and that gives us the unique ability to make connections with even more people. As a small place-based charity, we definitely cover a lot of ground, we punch above our weight, and as individuals, it's understandable that you might be more interested in one aspect of our work over another. For example, our green spaces or our grant making, our community hub or our guild chapel, our repair cafe or our warm hub. And if I can ask one thing of you this evening, it's that you take some time after this meeting to explore our website and explore the range of things that we do. Firstly, though, every organisation would agree that solid finances bring you sanity. And for the Trust, this means our ability to have a discretionary grant pot in excess of £1 million each year. Rebecca, our Head of Finance, will go through the numbers with you in more detail shortly. And I don't think I'm giving away any spoilers when I say that financially the Trust is in good shape. There is, however, another measure of success, and one that we talk about a lot, and that's impact, and whether we're having a positive impact on the local community. The dictionary describes impact as having a powerful effect or strong impression. But what do we really mean when we say that something is impactful? I want you to hold that thought because I'll come back to it in a minute. Over the year, we awarded a total of £1.2 million in funding to 155 charities, and that's a 40% increase on the number of charities that we supported last year. In the previous year, should I say, because we're a bit schizophrenic when it comes to our AGM. Every organisation or group that we fund works directly in support of local people with the aim of improving lives in so many ways that it would not be possible for me to list them all here now. You can see some of the logos of the organisations we've supported up on the screen behind me. And our grants range in value from a few £100 to £100,000. And personally, I'm always drawn to the smaller grants because they can often have an immediate and direct impact on people. Our small grants programme is for applications up to £2,000, and in 2023 we awarded 27 of these. As we all know, the smallest things can make the biggest difference, and so I'd like to highlight a few of the small grants here for you this evening. Funding of just £300 to the Stratford-upon-Avon Soroptimists bought plants and equipment to ensure that the cottage garden that they have created at Stratford Hospital looks its best all year round. The garden can be seen and enjoyed by staff and patients, and all of their work is carried out by volunteers. Shottery Youth Theatre was awarded £1,500 to support the continuation of its long-standing tradition of producing an annual pantomime. The funding, part of a total project cost of £6,500 for Marion's Merry Maids, was used to replace essential equipment, including backboards, scenery, and microphones. Founded in 1976, SYT provides an inclusive platform for children aged 7 through to 18 to develop not only their acting and singing talents, but to build on crucial life skills such as confidence and making friends. Participation is open to all, no auditions are required, and this approach ensures that every child has the opportunity to shine regardless of their experience or ability. And finally on this slide, many of you will be familiar with the Lifeways Therapy Centre in Albany Road. And in 2023, they were awarded £500 towards a programme of work to support those who care for loved ones. This funding contributed towards vital wellbeing events for local carers, including a spring get-together, a Christmas party and a summer outing. These events provide much-needed respite and social interaction for those who devote their lives to caring for others. They're designed to offer the carers a complete break from their demanding responsibility, helping to alleviate feelings of exhaustion, isolation and depression. And by offering regular opportunities for relaxation and enjoyment, these events contribute significantly to the psychological well-being of participants. They also provide carers with something positive to look forward to throughout the year, boosting morale and helping maintain a more positive outlook on life. Then moving away from our smaller grants briefly, I also want to remind you that core costs remain a challenge for charities, and there's been no change in that since we met last year. I'm delighted that over this year we were able to provide significant funding to cover things like rent, utilities and salaries. As I have said before, being a grant funder that actively encourages applications for core funding is something that I'm especially proud of. It's not common in all funders, and I know how much reassurance core funding can bring to CEOs, fundraisers and trustees, meaning that they can focus on their core work. If you were with us last year, and I hope you were, you will remember that I talked about how important supporting young people is for us. It's a key objective for the Trust, and one of our largest grants of the year at £100,000 was to the Stratford Youth Collective. This was welcomed by them at a time when a decade of cuts to local authority funding continues to impact outcomes for our young people. The money helped them secure a lease on a building and set up the youth club. Now, when I stood here last year, the Youth Collective had just opened the doors for their first sessions, and a year on, I'm delighted to report that they're regularly supporting 250 young people aged 8 to 18 years. That's a total of 2,500 attendances across 139 sessions. But the key point of difference here is the coming together of the 5 partner charities that offer mental health support through LifeSpace, specific interest-led activities like the popular weekly Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D if you're in the know, by Escape Arts, and practical work experience for the young people from New Meaning Training who are using this academic year to design, create and build a brand new garden space for the Youth Hub. So all of this has led us to think what we mean when we say impact. Is it the total number of people that have come into contact with the charities we fund? That'll be tens of thousands of people, and that feels to me like quite a big number. Big numbers don't always indicate success. What about if one person has a transformative experience? Is that enough? And what does impact mean to me as a local resident or to you? Are we impacted simply by what we see, what we hear, and what we feel? It's my belief that impact is subjective, it's perfectly imperfect, and often immeasurable. And over the course of the next 15 months, we will write our next 5-year strategic plan with an aim to tackle measurement of our impact as part of that. In preparation, we commissioned Bayes Business School to conduct some independent research with applicants to review and measure the impact of our grant giving on the Stratford-upon-Avon community in particular. The overwhelming feedback from the online and in-depth interviews with grant recipients was extremely positive. All organisations surveyed had provided important but proportionate impact measurement information to the Trust, which we can use to improve and develop and innovate. Comments from the research are on the slide behind me. And I've highlighted 3. We've had a whole host. Sitting in my place, I can see how far they, the Trust, have come and how much they have evolved. They have been brave, and it is the right thing to do. The Trust is a smart funder, knows the community and funds the right stuff. And really importantly for me, the Trust understands the demographics of the area. All of this is really reassuring when we come to work every day and we try to fund in the best possible way. But positive impact can be achieved in so many different ways and goes way beyond our grant making. Understanding more about the impact of our work in its entirety, not just our funding, will help us become a better charity. Using our knowledge of the parish, the local communities, our community assets like the hub, our green spaces and the bandstand, we strive to work as a community connector for Stratford, providing opportunities for people to find health and well-being benefits, whether they are alone or part of a group. For example, music and shared experience is a proven way of uniting people, and each summer we run a weekly series of free concerts at the bandstand on the recreation ground. It's a small but really important piece of our work that for us gives people a chance to come together in a way that is relaxed. It showcases the talent of local musicians, all of whom are paid, and we try hard to put on a varied programme of genres and styles. Tim has already spoken about our wonderful team of volunteers who connect people through a shared love of history, skill sharing, nature, and general kindness. And we're welcoming more and more people through the door of our community hub to take part in our regular free-to-access sessions like Warm Hub or children's holiday activities, or to join an organised session through groups like Adult Community Learning. Many of you will remember that we moved into the ground floor of Venture House in June 2023, and I have to say we're very grateful to the District Council for helping us find our temporary home, and the search continues for something more permanent. And in closing this section, I'd say all of these activities create hundreds of tiny touch points where people come together, learn something new, share a skill, make a new friend, and above all, have some fun. And speaking of fun, at the Lench Meadows, enjoyment of the reserve is growing within the community. A recent survey revealed a growing awareness and interest in the LNR, with some encouraging results showing the majority of visitors are local residents, 20% visiting for the first time, 60% arriving on foot, and 8% on bicycle. Here are some of the things they told us. I'm a town centre resident without a garden. The nature reserve is a peaceful place to enjoy nature in Stratford without lots of tourists, especially on sunny days. It's a beautiful walk into town. It's a natural environment, nature on our doorstep. And finally, and importantly, accessibility is brilliant for people with mobility issues. And then with help from the children of Thomas Jolliffe and Bishopton Primary Schools, we have created a nature-based scavenger hunt. And then we were thrilled to see on Twitter that Year 6 children from Holy Trinity had visited the nature reserve in July for their end-of-term geography field trip. And you can see that post on the screen behind me now. Meanwhile, the different habitats created as part of the work are encouraging birds, animals, and insects to the area. The slide behind me shows just some of the small creatures making a big difference to the local nature reserve and to the environment. Staying on the theme of nature, I'm excited to share with you our next project, which started in 2023 when we secured funding as part of the government's Biodiversity Net Gain scheme. Since World War II, we have lost 97% of our traditional wildflower grasslands. The loss continues, and this habitat is now a rare spectacle in our countryside. As part of our commitment to increasing biodiversity, we're pleased to be working with a local specialist to contribute to the recovery of nature by creating new habitats for wildlife with a 14-acre wildflower meadow at Rowley Fields. This picture, for the tractor enthusiasts in the audience, was taken on Tuesday with the roller at the front scarifying the land and the hopper at the back delivering the seed. To begin with, just 2 acres of grasslands are being sown as wildflower meadows, 1 in each field. This is to minimise disruption to visitors and so that we can learn what works well and critically what doesn't. Next year, we will add a further 4 acres and so on until all 14 acres have been completed. As you can see in the picture on the left, where it says before, the area looks quite scruffy. That's around 60% bare earth, where there was once grass. Yellow rattle, the picture in the middle, sourced from a farm in Wootton Wowen, has been added. Yellow rattle is known as the meadow maker. This plant is parasitic to grasses and it will help reduce their dominance by up to 60%, giving the flowers a chance to compete. We can expect to see the seedlings appearing in the cut grass from spring with a sea of yellow flowering heads in the summer. Rowley Fields is what's classified as a lowland neutral hay meadow. The best lowland meadows can have up to 40 species of plants per square metre, and this is what we're aiming for. And that's the picture on the right. But we will need to be patient. In time, species such as red and white clover, meadow buttercup, ribwort plantain, oxeye daisies, common knapweed, bird's foot trefoil, meadow vetchling and lady's bedstraw will all be introduced to the meadow, but only after the yellow rattle has reduced the vigour of the grasses and the soil nutrient status has been reduced. And so in bringing this to a close, I hope, having listened to my presentation, you share my excitement about the future of the Trust. We're almost at the end of our 5-year strategic plan period, and very soon work will start on the plan that will take us to the end of 2031. And I want us to build on the success of recent years. We will start with a large-scale consultation asking members, stakeholders and the public for their views. And we can't wait to hear from you. And as members, I hope that you can help us with one small thing by encouraging others to respond, as well as responding yourself. And in closing, I must offer my sincere thanks to our trustees who give their time and expertise so generously, and to my colleagues for working behind the scenes to make this evening a success, and for all that they do for the Trust and the town. We're a small team with big ambitions, and I truly value the knowledge, professionalism, friendship and enthusiasm that they bring to work each day. And I'd now like to hand over to Rebecca Hampson, our Head of Finance.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This evening, I want to take you through the highlights of the Trust's financial performance in the 12 months to December 2023. So, starting off with the headlines. From a financial perspective, 2023 seemed remarkably calm compared with the previous years. In 2023, the Trust generated an income of 3.7 million and made a surplus of 434k. A surplus is where income exceeds costs. The surplus in the year, compared with the previous year, occurred because we had lower property expenses. These were in fact about 0.5 million lower, but balanced against that, we had an increased spend in grants and charitable activities of just over 200k, and also a small increase in our income. You may remember from previous AGMs, we've mentioned that our strategic plan for 2021 to 25 has an objective relating to income. This being that income will return to pre-COVID levels, which were 3.6. So it's excellent news that this year we've exceeded this level and achieved the objective. Costs in 2023 were 3.3 million, compared with 3.6 in 2022. The key differences I've highlighted above. In 2023, we allocated 0.3 million of the surplus to designated reserves. These are ring-fenced funds that we keep for future activities. And these will be relating to the Community Hub ongoing costs and the Community Hub future-proofing project. In 2023, the Trust net assets were 58.5 million, which was 0.9 million greater than the previous year. And this increase all related to growth in our investments, which I will come back to on a later slide. The total net asset figure includes 57.9 million of investments, of which 53.9 million are classified as permanently endowed investments. For charities, the rules around permanently endowed investments are quite complex, but the one key thing that charities have to remember is that the income generated from these assets can be used for charitable purposes, but the capital value cannot be used and has to remain invested. Even when an asset is sold, its proceeds have to be reinvested in full. So moving on to investments in a little bit more detail, you may remember this slide from previous years in the graph format. And so just taking you through the different types of investments that we hold. We hold property, both in the physical state and in property funds, and also quoted investments and some short-term cash deposits. Within our investment strategy, we have set the aim that property, both physical and property funds, represent between 50% and 70% of our total investment value. At the end of 2023, the combined property holdings represented 64.6%. So well within that bracket, and actually a 5% reduction from the previous year. But it's always worth remembering as well, during the early 2000s, the early days of the Trust, the investments were 100% physical property, which were all in Stratford and a high proportion in the town centre. But now the Trust has a more mixed and balanced investment portfolio, thanks to the property funds we hold and also the quoted investment holdings. The Trust invests in two property funds, the Charities Property Fund and the Schroeder Capital UK Real Estate Fund. At the end of December 23, the property fund investments were 4.6 million and the physical property had a value of 32.8 million. The quoted investments are managed by two investment houses for us, Saracen & Partners and Casino Capital Management. The value of these investments was 20.1 million, compared with a value at the end of December 22 of 16.9. So there was a 3.2 million increase year on year, which sounds like, wow, they've made an amazing improvement. But actually, although they have improved, 2.7 million of that increase was due to property sale proceeds being invested in quoted investments. And these were held in a liquidity fund with a yield of 6%. So far in 2024, the equity investments have performed well. However, It's also worth remembering that the Trust invests for the long term and so has to hold its nerve and ride any turbulent times that occur. The Trust recognises that equity values can fluctuate, and so, like other large investors, we measure our investments performance on a rolling 10-year rather than a snapshot. So just in terms of the summary of investments, I was just going to highlight some things in terms of the different categories that we hold. So in terms of the physical property, this year, as in the previous couple of years, we haven't had to undertake a revaluation, as we only have to do this once every 5 years, and that was last done in 2020. Again, in terms of the physical property portfolio, at the end of 2023, we had 2 void offices and 3 void retail units. The retail units were 2 buildings to the rear of Henley Street and a unit on Weston Road. And in terms of those voids, we're pleased to report that in July 2024, the repair work started on the units to the rear of Henley Street, and we plan to commence marketing them in the next few weeks. The repair work has been partly funded by the Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund. The Trust is also pleased to report that it has a much lower void rate than the national average, which is 11.45, whereas the Trust has a void rate of only 3%. In 2023, the Trust made 3 property disposals, the first being the Coach House pub on Rother Street in March 23, which generated proceeds of 0.7 million, and these were reinvested in the Charity Property Fund. Then in June, the Trust sold the Windmill and the Garrick pubs for a combined value of 2.3 million. The net proceeds from these sales have been reinvested in a sterling liquidity fund with a high yield rate. These sales were part of our property strategy within our current strategic plan, with the aim to try and rebalance our investment portfolio so it is less dependent on Stratford properties. The physical property portfolio, which comprises over 100 properties, both retail, industrial and residential, yielded 8.1%, which was ahead of 2022 by 0.5%. And this was mainly due to lower property-related costs in 2023 than the previous year. In terms of the property funds, in 2023, they delivered a minus 4.9% return, which was below that of the benchmarks. But the income yields which they generated were very good, and the slight negative movement was due to a capital depreciation. However, when we measure the performance of these funds over 3, 5 and 10 years, the Trust property funds have outperformed the MSCI and AREF All Balanced Property Fund Index, which is the benchmark we use. So that's really positive, and it speaks back to the fact that our investment strategy looks at a 10-year rolling period rather than a snapshot. Moving on to quoted investments, excluding the property funds, yielded 4.3%, which was an improvement on that of 2022, which had a yield of 3.4%. Our target yield for equity investments is 3.2, so we overachieved that in 2023, another positive. We have regular reviews and update meetings with our fund managers. All the income that is generated from our investments enables our grant giving and also funds our running costs. As you may also remember from previous years, like other charities, the Trust isn't meant to be a profit-making organisation, so our grants are in effect the balancing number or the profit of the charity. So moving on to our disposable income, and just to sort of put that into some context for you, we define disposable income as income less property and investment costs. And in 2023, our disposable income was 3 million, which compared with 2.3 million in 2022. Property investment costs in the main related to this improvement because they were lower in 2023 than they were in 2022. And the reason they were lower in 2023 was because in 2022, we had some significant building repair costs, and also we had some quite sizable expenditure in relation to the Riverside Local Nature Reserve, which Sarah's mentioned earlier in the presentations, and also we talked about in last year's AGM. Overheads, as you can see from the pie chart, represented 19% and amounted to just under 600k. These were slightly higher than the previous year, and this was due to an increase in staff costs netted against some savings in terms of office costs. And then moving on to the purple pie slice, the non-discretionary grants. This represents 25.9% of our disposable income and is just under 800k. The largest part of this pie slice relates to KES at 727k. This amount is calculated by a prescribed formula set out by the High Court in relation to the Guild Estate's financial performance. So our hands are absolutely tied. And at the grant to the almshouses on Church Street of 55k and a small grant to the Vicar of Holy Trinity. Discretionary grants, though, are the biggest slice. They're green, and they are 40.9% of the disposable income and were 1.25 million, compared with the previous year of 1.16 million. This figure includes the grants awarded to our beneficiaries of 1 million and the running costs of our community hub, 145k. In 2023, our expenditure, as I've said before, was less than our disposable income, so we generated a surplus of 430k. And like 2021, when we also made a surplus, we allocated most of that to designated reserves. So moving on to our big green pie and looking at it in a little bit more detail, discretionary grant activity in 2023. So grant giving was back to pre-COVID levels, which was brilliant. And Community Hub had running costs of 145k, which was lower than in 2022. And if you remember, in May, June time of 2023, we moved from our original home at Foundation House on Masons Road to our current home at Venture House on Avenue Farm. So within these costs in 2023 included the relocation costs. As an aside, the trust lease at Venture House has now been extended to May 2027, which gives us a little bit longer to find our future permanent forever home. In 2023, the trust awarded 155 discretionary grants, as Sarah has mentioned earlier, and this was quite a big increase on previous year, but that was due mainly to the fact that there was quite a lot of small grants awarded to local neighbourhood groups to celebrate the King's coronation. Also in 2023, we awarded 53 hardship grants to individuals. This was an increase of 7 from last year. These had a combined value of 15k, but they made a massive difference to the individuals who received them. There were 13 grants awarded in 2023, which were greater than 20k, of which 10 were greater than 30k, and these are on the slide you can see behind me. The other 3 grants, which were greater than 20k, were awarded to the Heart of England MenCap and LifeSpace Trust, both for core cost support, and also Home Start South Warwickshire to fund their holistic perinatal family support to parents in Stratford upon Avon. This year, the grant to the Playhouse, as in 2023 for this year, was 100k. But for the year commencing the 1st of July 2024, the grant has been reduced to 75k. The purpose of this grant is to fund community activities and events within the hall, and it's linked to certain defined KPIs. Apart from the Playhouse grant, the next 2 largest awards were to Stratford Youth Collective, which Sarah has already talked about, and also a grant to the Citizens Advice South Warwickshire to fund their frontline work helping residents who are struggling financially to access available benefits and funding. And I think probably you'll recognise most of the other organisations on the slide. I will end with some highlights from 2024. As you know, the Trust is always slightly cautious about its outturn and the impact that the wider economy and world events may have on our investments. But we always have to plan for today, as well as looking at the long term, because we are only the custodians for future generations, as our predecessors have been for the many hundreds of years before us. Earlier this month, we completed the purchase of 1718 Bridge Street. You will probably all know that as WH Smith's. The Trust already owns the part of WH Smith's that's on the High Street. So it was a very logical and strategic purchase to buy the other half. This purchase was funded by some of the proceeds from the sales of the properties last year. This year, as well as giving out funds, we have also been the beneficiary and the receiver of 2 awards. The first was 50k from the Rural England Prosperity Fund, which will fund some of the repairs to the rear of Henley Street, as I've mentioned earlier. And the second, just to tell you, if you don't know much about the Rural England Prosperity Fund, which I must admit I didn't until earlier this year, it's a national funding scheme devolved to local councils for running various projects to improve the rural economy, and it's part of the Levelling Up initiative. Also, in January 2024, the college estate received 443k of biodiversity net gain funding to support the project on Rowley Fields, which is anticipated to take 30 years. And this funding will match the costs of establishing and maintaining the wildflower meadows that Sarah has spoken about earlier over those coming years. In 2024, we have a discretionary grants budget of £1 million, which we will commit by the end of the year. At the moment, we've awarded 0.6 million of it. And just as a reminder, and a heads up for you beneficiaries out there, the deadline for applying for grants this year is 30th of September. But obviously, if you want a smaller grant, then the window stays open all year. But if you are thinking of making an application, I would urge you to reach out to the grants team. At that point, I'd just like to say thank you for your time, and then I will hand you back to Tim.
We move on to the exciting part of the meeting, when I can find it, which is on the slide. The formal business of the meeting. If we could have the house lights up, please, that would be useful, please. And we have a number of resolutions to discuss and vote on. And you'll need your voting cards, please. So the first resolution, it's on the screen for you now, is to receive the report of the trustees and the financial statements for the year ended 31st of December 2023, together with the report of the auditors. So could I ask, please, for all those in favour to raise your voting cards? I'm just waiting for a nod from Lynn. Thank you. Anybody voting against, please raise your cards. Thank you very much. Just so that you do know, there were 4 votes in favour and 1 vote against, but on the basis of our votes that resolution is carried. So that then moves us on to resolution 2. To appoint Sayer Vincent as auditors and to authorise the trustees to fix their remuneration. The change from Safferys to Sayer Vincent was made after careful consideration and following a retendering of the contract. So again, if we can raise our cards if we're in favour, please. Yep, and if you'd like to raise your hands if you're against. And we had the same results, 4 in favour by proxy votes and 1 against, and on the basis of what we've just seen, that is also carried, which moves us on to special business. And we have one resolution to approve the proposed amendment to the Memorandum and Articles of Association to update the names of the wards making up the civil parish of Stratford upon Avon. Just briefly, there was a recent boundary change which has led to new wards being created, which in turn were given new names, and our Memorandum of Articles of Association list those and define them, and that's the area in which our members and beneficiaries must live, work or study. The new names, award names, are listed on the notice and also on the slide. We're going to do it slightly differently because this does require 75% majority, but fingers crossed. Does anybody object? If you do, please raise your cards. No? So if you're in favour, if you'd like to raise your cards. And we had 5 proxy votes in favour, and that resolution is also carried, so thank you. And that is the end of that session and moves us on to members' questions. I'm just going to ask James, Mark and Simon to join us on the stage. I'll probably sit on the end, folks, so if you want to take seats. Before we open up to the floor for questions, we did receive 3 written questions in advance, and we think it might be helpful on this occasion to cover those now. I'm going to read them out in a second. It's correct that the questions and answers will appear in our minutes for the AGM, and the gentlemen that have joined me on the stage, we've got Simon on the far end, who chairs our Finance, Investment and Property, Mark, who chairs our Grants and Community Engagement Committee, and then right next to me is James, who's our Grants Manager, you've probably seen before up here on the stage. So, the first question I'm going to read out, and it is, does the Trust have any sort of relationship at all with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and if yes, what sort? And I'm going to ask James to answer that one.
That's me. It's a nice and easy one. So we have no formal relationship with the Birthplace Trust. We see them as a key stakeholder when we do consultations around the community, because obviously they're a key organisation locally. From a grants perspective, they are always welcome to apply for a grant, but since I have been here 5 and a bit years, they haven't done. But we talk to them regularly. And they also own the field next to Rowley Field, so we talk to them quite a lot around the shared green spaces that we've talked quite a lot about today. But formally, we don't have a relationship, but we have a very good working relationship with them more generally.
Thank you. So the second question is slightly longer. For many years, there have been discussions at annual general meetings about challenging the extent of the grant given to KES, King Edward VI School, with seemingly very little progress. Is it possible to give an update, please? And whatever the membership's views on the justification, is there a point at which the chances of being able to make any progress in mounting such a challenge becomes unrealistic? And I'm going to ask Sarah to answer that question.
So I think I've turned my mic back on. Yes, I have. That's very good. So in 2020, at this meeting, some members of Stratford upon Avon Schools set up an informal working group to consider the possibility of a challenge. And my understanding is that they're waiting for some external legal advice to come back to them. But I know that we have Jane Price in the audience with us tonight. And Jane was one of the leads on that. So Jane, I don't know if we've got any more news or any further updates beyond that.
Yes. And just to say, the working group wasn't just the schools, there are also a number of members involved in that. Those of you who were here last year, and perhaps the year before, and the year before, and the year before, last year I gave an update, and we had some pro bono legal advice from a local solicitor's firm, and we had identified somebody prepared to give us some pro bono legal counsel, a barrister, which is a much more expensive and difficult proposition. Last year we thought we'd run out of free time from them, but we discovered that they were willing to do a little bit more. And so we have just very recently had a 20-page opinion from them. At that point, I'm kind of prefer to leave it. It's quite complex. I'm not a lawyer. I haven't prepared a presentation. What we need to do is then, with our solicitors, look at that advice and then engage with the trust about that advice to then kind of make a decision about what can be done next. So that's the position. The one thing I would say, which I did understand, was that we as a working group can't make the legal challenge. What we have to do is try and convince the trustees, who I know have their own view about this, that it is possible for a route to be taken, but we can't be people to do that. So we have to use what we have learned and whatever we have at our disposal to convince the trustees or the KES Trust to take some action to change the situation. But watch this space. If you want to know more, I'll be here afterwards. I might get myself a drink, and feel free to come and talk to me more, or give me your details if you want to get more involved or keep track of what we're doing. But I can't remember the question. It was quite long, but I don't think...
Well, there's a second
I think we just keep going. I think we keep going.
That's the first part of the question.
Oh, okay.
So I can answer the second part of the question. Thank you, Jane. So it's a very complicated question. So the first thing that it's worth remembering that the question refers to a grant. It absolutely is not a grant to KES. It's an entitlement. And that entitlement is set out in the order that was made in the High Courts of Justice in 1996, the 11th of March, 96 to be precise, and is also set out in the Charity Commission scheme that was written in 2001 when the trust was set up. And that dates back 500 years to the point at which the Guild estate, the endowment was set up. So I think it's important that I stress to you that the trust has to maintain a neutral position in this. We are the administrator of a scheme that's handed down by the High Courts of Justice and backed up by the Charity Commission. We have no sides to take, so we will talk equally with the schools on both sides of the fence, and what that means, fence if there is such a thing, and what that means is that whatever inquiries we get, we will always cooperate fully. But we're not in a position to make any changes to that 36% entitlement to KES trustees. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And the third written question that we received is, for how long is the agreement with Stratford District Council with regard to the use of Venture House operative, and has there been any progress in securing a permanent replacement for Foundation House stroke Venture House? And I'm going to ask Rebecca to answer that question, please.
So as you probably will have might have noticed in my presentation, I referred to the fact that we now had a lease at Venture House till May 27, which is brilliant, because when we stood here this time last year, we said we only had a 12-month license, and we recognised that that wasn't enough time for us to find a new home, get it sorted, and move in. So we have a little bit of breathing place to find the right place, and we are busy looking at various options. And it's a very exciting time for us to, as much as we love Venture House, we know what we would like our future home to enable us to do. And so trying to find the right location is where we're coming from. And hopefully this time next year, we will have something more exciting and concrete to share with you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So those were the 3 written questions. Thank you to the members that sent them in if you're present tonight. We've now got a little time to take questions from the floor. If you put your hands up, then Sarah will come round with the microphone so you can ask your question. Thank you.
Good evening. Could I just ask about the relationship with the theatre? Two. One, what I see there was a grant given to them in this past year, and I'd be interested to know what it was for. The other thing is that at the time, if my memory serves me correctly, at the time the theatre was rebuilt, and a massive grant was given to the theatre, which I must admit I wasn't convinced was within the remit of the trust to give, on the basis that the theatre is a national charity. It is a national charity, and the trust should be benefiting the town only. But be that as it may, it was given. But there was also a grant given for a facility above the bookshop on Waterside. They own that. They own above that. And I think, again, that was a 6-figure sum. And I think it was specifically for some sort of local activities, educational activities involving the town. Now, I've seen no evidence of those, and I'd be very, I must admit, I'm a skeptic when it comes to the theatre and their financial abilities. And I would be very keen to know what auditing is done to make sure that the town has benefited, particularly from that additional grant for that facility. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy to answer the first bit, and then perhaps I think we're talking about the claw, aren't we?
Yeah. I must admit I can't remember exactly what the RSC one was for last year because we funded them the last couple of years. I think it was the Carers project, was it? So yeah, there you go. I'm glad someone can remember what my job is. You shouldn't have got Josie up on stage. Yeah. So it was a project called Like I Care, and it was for young carers locally. So the RSC, with Warwickshire Young Carers, but it was for young carers based in Stratford. It worked with those young carers who obviously have very challenging home lives, and they work with them to tell their story as what a young carer is. So actually trying to turn it into a positive thing. So they talked about how they were, it's really a superpower to have some of the experiences they have. So they told their story through art, alongside in conjunction with the RSC's My Neighbour Totoro. So they also took the young carers down to London to see that, but they also did some really great art window displays locally. But one of the things that was really interesting was they had a QR code scannable, and you could ring that number and you could listen to the young carers talk about their experiences and what it's like to be a young person looking after a family member, the pressures to grow up faster, to overcome some of the challenges, to be hidden a lot of the time because they can't access sometimes traditional youth services because they've got a lot extra responsibilities. So it was a really interesting grant to the RSC. It was really community focused. So I think we're really proud to do that, and I think it's really interesting because we know that the young carers themselves felt seen from a community group that, seen and heard, literally big art pieces here on the BHS building, the numbers that people could call to hear the experiences of a group that sometimes is under the radar, that isn't seen by people and their experiences aren't known. So so that's the grant. It was quite interesting.
Shall I answer the other bit?
Yes. So
the other bit I think you're referring to is the Claw Centre, which is the building that's the space that's above Carluccio's and the Works, or whatever it's called. And obviously that a number of years ago, probably, 10, 12 years ago, the Trust took a long lease on that property, and it is let to the RSC on a peppercorn rent. And in that lease, they have, one of the conditions of that lease is that they have to allow a certain quantity of available spaces, sort of bookable times for local groups. I can't remember the exact number.
I think it's 20.
It's 20.
Yeah.
I was going to say 20, but I thought I might be wrong.
I actually did know the answer to that one.
And because that lease is over a period of time, we show that grant every year. And so we have a grant of 4,400 every year that reflects that. In terms of the grant that James has just spoken to, I think it probably was around about the 10K-ish mark. It definitely wasn't more than 20 because it's not on my spreadsheet, on my slides. And then in terms of the other grant you were referring to, which was a long, long time ago, I can't remember when the RSC got refurbed, but it was quite a while ago. And that was, in terms of their refurbishment cost, was a really small proportion. And how our grant funding works, as you obviously know and you alluded to in your question, it's all about supporting the residents of Stratford. And obviously, residents of Stratford do go to watch performances. And so we made a very small proportion in terms of the full price, a donation. Our grant was very small. And so that was the logic. And I know when the trustees who were on the board at that time, they spent a long time thinking about, was it the right thing to do? And because it was such a small proportion of the total refurbishment costs, and there is a benefit to Stratford, it felt like the right thing to do. But that was obviously, none of the trustees who are currently on the board were on the board then, but I know that the trustees then did spend a long time discussing it.
But are we auditing that this peppercorn rent is being charged for this claw centre? Are they publicising it to local organisations that it's available, and is it being used by local organisations?
Yes, they are. James can answer that because he's working closely with the communities team at the RSC about the Claw Learning Space. The Claw Learning Space is a vital resource, not just for the RSC, but for all of the Stratford primary schools. So prior to them having that space, they had nowhere that they could bring young people in for workshops to learn more about Shakespeare's work, his words and performance. The best way to learn about Shakespeare is up on your feet and doing it, not to sit in a classroom. And you need quite a big space to do that for a class of 30 or 3 classes of 30. So the Claw Learning Space gives them the ability to serve every school, every primary child in Stratford has the opportunity to visit that Claw Learning Space for a workshop. I think in every year that they're there, and they all get the opportunity to perform on stage at the RSC, normally in the Swan, but sometimes on the main stage as well. And then you mentioned quite rightly that they're an international company, and that means that they can provide outreach to national primary schools as well, who want to come to Stratford because of the draw of Shakespeare, and they have a space where they can introduce those children to Shakespeare on their feet and in a way that's interactive. But there is the local community use as well that's not related to Shakespeare, and James is working with Nikki and the team.
Yeah, so I work quite closely with them around that. So they give us every year a really quite detailed and quite interesting report on the work delivered from Claw in terms of direct numbers, financials, as well as all the case studies from the young people who go through the schools element of it, and as well as the broader community work there. So we get quite a detailed report annually. In terms of, I'll just add on to the thing around national charities. We do fund a number of national charities. They just have to deliver their work locally. So for instance, earlier on when Rebecca was going through her slides, you'll see Refuge on there. So Refuge is a national charity, but they have a Stratford-based refuge for women and women and children, because 2/3 of people in a refuge are children who are fleeing domestic abuse across the country. Some of them will come to Stratford once. So we fund lots of national organisations who can clearly show their impact locally. So.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Sarah, have you got the mic? Have we got any more questions, please? I'm just conscious of the time. Well, that is good. That is good. Thank you very much. In that case, I'm going to stand up and move back over here. So we're getting close to the end, but before we close, we actually want to ask you this evening to for your help, if you can help us. Each year, the Town Trust takes part in the National Fun Palace event, and this year is the 10th anniversary. We're keen to seek volunteers to assist at the event, which takes place on Saturday the 5th of October, and this year is being hosted at the Crown Plaza Hotel. So, if you have a skill, a hobby or an interest that you would like to share, we would love to hear from you. And to give you a little flavour of the joy of Fun Palaces, we've got a short film, just a few minutes to show you, and then we'll close.
Fun Palaces is a movement, one that values and celebrates everyone's creativity, tastes and interests. The annual weekend of celebration is one way we do this. In its 10th year, here's what happened.
It's a real community event led by the community, lots of different people and groups involved, and I think we just couldn't not do it now because everyone loves it so much.
It's a lovely way of bringing people together, having fun with creativity.
It makes people realise what other people can do. Wow, I didn't know you did that. And what you made that? That's creative. That's fantastic.
We shared what we love with our friends, neighbours and community.
So today we have been doing board games and card games.
Learning how to make fires, learning how to cut wood safely.
How to make a electric motor out of a battery and some copper wire.
The beekeepers are in today, a cricket group as well.
Some yoga classes, bug bingo and an orienteering treasure trail.
A guy who is into RAF Exeter history. Ali is sharing her collection of dragons.
Cycle maintenance and repair.
Make your own drone.
Pinhole camera from an orange.
We've had all sorts of craziness.
We brought our community together to make decisions for ourselves.
So much onus is on people in the wider community or in your community to actually come and do something themselves.
The Fun Palaces provides a great opportunity for our young people to really get to take charge of something they maybe wouldn't typically.
Yeah, for us, like relinquishing control a little bit and giving it over to other people to do whatever it is that they want. So, which is a bit scary, but also like really fun.
We celebrated the creativity we all have, whatever it looks like.
It encourages people to say yes to things that they haven't tried before.
It also opens the doors for members of the public to say, well, actually, I have a skill, can I get involved next year?
We wanted to bring the creative arts to the younger generation or the older generation, anyone who wants to be involved in this.
Seeing the impact of culture and arts and science and what a difference it can make.
We brought people together for the first time.
Fun Palaces seemed like a really good opportunity to invite new people in.
It just shows like people can work together and you can create new friends just from doing a simple activity.
If you connect with one person, that's really important.
After 10 years of community creativity, it's clear Fun Palaces do it differently.
I think what's lovely about being a Fun Palace is that it's part of a national thing. You know, there's lots of other Fun Palaces going on. We can all be part of something really big all together.
So varied across the country as well, what's going on. Every place is different.
For me to actually celebrate the 10th year of the Fun Palace was really important.
Join our movement. Go to funpalaces.co.uk.
Do it! It's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you will just have an experience like no other.
We're doing a good thing, bringing community together.
This is actually a powerful thing. This creativity is powerful.
You kind of have to trust in people and that people are going to be brilliant.
It's going to be great and you're going to meet so many new people.
Everybody make Fun Palaces.
So, if you want to join our movement in Stratford on the 5th of October and you've got anything that's crazy or a skill or a hobby or an interest, please do speak to us. We'd love to hear from you. Before we go, I especially want to thank Sarah and her team for all their hard work throughout the year on our behalf. They do a tremendous job. They are a small team. And thank you very much for attending this evening and supporting us. The meeting is now closed. We hope to see you in the bar. Thank you.